Let's bring in Tanner Kern from DraftKings. Follow Tanner on X at TannerKern_. Tanner, if you had the East in the over, it was never a sweat. If you played in the game, it probably wasn't a sweat. What did you make of what we just saw collectively here in this All-Star game?
So I did have the East in the over, luckily. I took the East because it was plus money. I'm not going to play minus 150 in an All-Star game. And I took the over because there's absolutely no defense in the All-Star game. So that's my biggest takeaway right there. These guys are just playing offense. They're shooting three-pointers consistently. Probably I'm going to stay away from betting the All-Star game in future seasons. Just looking at it, it's very hard to predict. It worked out for me, obviously, tonight, but at the same time, too, you got Luka Doncic taking, half-court, full-court heaves, basically, with 30-something seconds left in the half, and then tweeting 2-for-1 analytics in the locker room. So I'm going to stay away from this. It's too much of a show for me, but again, it did work out tonight.
Tanner, in 1953, when they first had the NBA All-Star Game, there were 154 combined points. Tonight, in 2024, 168 combined three-pointer attempts between these two teams. So this is the new basketball, man. This is not the basketball Dave and I, when we were younger in the 80s.
They tried in the fourth quarter, Tanner.
Beat the ball in the paint, man, and mid-range. This is three and rim, and anything else is just a crappy shot.
Yeah, it was wild to watch. Again, pretty much watched the entire game. Dame was fantastic. There were some guys that stood out. KD had a really good night. Karl-Anthony Towns, 50 points. We're really not talking about him because he was on the losing side. But overall, good night for the East and a good night for offense. Again, it's about the show. It's about watching the best basketball players in the world play offense. Nobody wants to see defense. Nobody's going out there and trying to get hurt. But you need to realize that coming into the game from a betting perspective. Never play an under in this. I think going into this game, I believe the over had hit 8 of the past 12 seasons. And now, based on what we saw tonight, the line next year could be very high. I think it was 363.5 for this game. We could see 380, 390 based on this total tonight.
Yeah, absolutely insane what we saw. And actually, the number dropped like a rock towards the under. Got way bet down to almost about 352, and it soars well past that total. So we'll see what those numbers look like next year. But let's look at the second half of this NBA season, Tanner, and what you might project here. Because Wes and I were talking about certain teams in divisional prices and teams that are still might possibly be motivated to win the division, but other teams really are just going to worry about seedings. Let's get into maybe some teams that we think might have better second halves than they had first. And that first team had a good showing this weekend. Dame wins the MVP, wins the three-point shootout. Giannis was the captain for the East. But Doc Rivers, this experiment going on in Milwaukee, so far, it looks like a disaster. Tanner, are they the type of team, because of the talent, that they can figure out a way to shore up this defense somehow and be a real – I know they're a contender because the players they have, but I don't know that anybody's taking them seriously. Should we be taking them more seriously in the second half?
Well, I think everyone's already crowned Boston the champions of the East, and we can sit here and say, yeah, they are the most talented team, but I have my concerns about the Celtics too. And in the East, it's a pretty wide open conference outside of the Celtics, right? And they can be beat, as we've seen in the past seasons. You have the Cavaliers, who are playing really good basketball right now. You have the Milwaukee Bucks, who are right up there, and the Knicks, the Sixers, and the Pacers right now. Those are the teams who are guaranteed to be in the regular playoffs. But looking at all those teams, I think the Bucks have a great chance. Obviously, you have Giannis. You have one of the best basketball players in the world. You have Damian Lillard doing what he has done tonight. You can see that. And he's able to do that throughout the second half of the season. They're going to be in good shape. And Doc Rivers, while the start has not been perfect for him per se, he's still a reputable basketball coach. We've seen him win games. We've seen him be in big spots and perform. Now, this is a tough situation for the Bucks, just based on how their entire season has gone with their coaching staff. But Doc Rivers, I think he'll do enough to figure it out. I'm not saying they're going to win the East, but they could be one of the top teams standing with the Boston Celtics at the end, and then we're probably going to see a 7-game series, and the best team will win.
Tanner, sticking with the East, and Dave and I were talking a little bit about divisions, and obviously division titles aren't necessarily a priority in the NBA because they don't always affect seeding, but we're kind of trying to identify the tryhards in the Eastern Conference. Who are teams that over the last 25 to 30 games, depending on how many each team has left to play in the East, that you really think, okay, we're going to really try to get that, first round or home court or whatnot, that are the tryhard teams that might not be like the Celtics at the top or Milwaukee?
So I think number one being the Indiana Pacers, right? Going after Pascal Siakam, getting him now. Tyrese Haliburton was fantastic tonight in the All-Star game. I want to give him credit, and he also showed a lack of. He was selfless tonight. He was passing the ball like crazy, hitting his threes when he took those. But he's a tremendous player, and now you have Pascal Siakam to join the mix. I think the Pacers are going to be a team that tries very hard down the stretch. Also, the New York Knicks. I was talking to my buddy about this. Since Jalen Brunson has come to the Knicks, he's became a bigger-than-life superstar, right? Jalen Brunson is no longer Luka's secondary guy down in Dallas. He is a full-on star, and we're seeing that with the Knicks. So I think they're going to be a team that tries hard. They're having fun playing basketball. So those two teams would be my top picks. And also the Orlando Magic. I really like what they have done. I love Paulo Banchero, really good basketball player. And they have a fun team down there in Orlando. So I think those would be my top three teams that you're going to see play really hard and consistent basketball no matter how their second half goes record-wise.
I've got a 35-1 long shot ticket on the Pacers to win the East after the Siakam trade. It's not actually 40-1.
Yes.
It's actually going
I hope you cash that ticket. I think they might be a year away, but, I think Tanner's right. I think that this team is absolutely going to try to at least get into that top four.
And the reason why, Tanner, that I made that play, if you look back at what happened to Boston and Milwaukee last year in the playoffs, right? They just underachieved, and here comes Miami. Nobody saw Miami going to Milwaukee winning that series, and certainly nobody saw Miami look like they were just going to wipe Boston off the floor. That thing gets tight, and then they have to ultimately win a Game 7, but they do it with the greatest of ease in that Game 7 a year ago. Are we not necessarily Miami, but it feels like that Boston and Milwaukee, because of the expectation levels, they get tight. They get tight against some of these series that they shouldn't really, I think, have much trouble. Is there anybody else out there? Could it be a redux of Miami, or do you think one of these younger teams like Orlando, like Indiana, and I don't know that we can count Philadelphia without Embiid, but can the Knicks really be that team that possibly wins the East? They're 7-1.
I'm seeing a lot of people on the Knicks to win the East, but I just can't really bet against the Celtics in the spot. I mean, value-wise, yes, I can't take the Celtics at 2-1 right now, or 2.5, 3-1, whatever you can find, depending on the sports book that you're using. But this Knicks team, I really do like them a lot. They have a lot of talent, especially it's led by Jalen Brunson. But outside of him, you have Julius Randle when he is playing good basketball. Isaiah Hartenstein's been good. Dante DiVincenzo. There's a lot of playmakers here, and I don't think the star power is enough to match Boston. I don't think it's enough to match Milwaukee down the stretch. I do think they are a little ways away. And the Celtics are going to be hard to beat for years, obviously, but they're a team that could do something. Also, the Pacers, they're a fun basketball team to watch. But I think we're kind of mistaking like fun basketball team, really young basketball team that plays hard against the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks, teams that have been there, done that, and can easily get back this season. So I wouldn't necessarily play it. The value is there, but the value is there because the Boston Celtics are the team to beat, and that's why you're getting good prices on these other teams, because the Celtics are just leaps and bounds better than everyone else.
Tanner, got about a minute 15 left in the segment, but to your point about playoff experience, the top two seeds in the West right now do not have a lot of playoff experience, with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder 1-2. Clippers there at 3. At the end of the regular season, who's that number one seed in the West? Because the Clippers certainly have been red hot.
I think it could be the Clippers. They've been very good, especially on the road, and that's the biggest thing in the NBA. You want to find teams that can win on the road, because if you can do it in the regular season, you can do it in the playoffs, and I think they're going to continue to do that in the second half of the season. But it's hard to go against Denver. Denver's only 3 games back. They know how to win, obviously winning NBA Finals consistently, right? You have one of the best basketball players in the world in Nikola Jokic. So I think the Denver Nuggets could make a run for that 1 seed, but right now, Clippers are a good bet there. But overall, all 4 of those teams, you got the Timberwolves, the Thunder, the Clippers, and the Nuggets. All 4 of those teams are in a position to get the 1 seed, depending on who gets hot in the second half. But my pick would be the Nuggets. I'm going with the experience.
Tanner, do you mind sticking around for another segment?
Definitely. Anytime. Love hanging out with you guys.
Let's keep Tanner Kern on the horn. Come on back. I do want to talk a little bit more NBA and also to the NHL, too, as we dip into their second half of the season, because we have to address some comments by one LeBron James before we finish that conversation in the West. We will do that when you come back with us right here as we continue the look ahead. To my left, I am Dave Ross. We continue this conversation with Tanner Kern from DraftKings. You can give Tanner a follow at TannerKern_. And Tanner, what I wanted to get to is we were talking a little bit about the West as we were going to break in the last segment. LeBron's had some interesting comments over this All-Star festivities, basically saying, and I'll paraphrase here, Tanner, I didn't know that they were trying to ship me to Golden State. And then he says, oh, I'd also like to end my career as a Laker. If you remember how Shaq's career ended, I think he was on a different team every week. It was not pretty. Is that, Tanner, what we're going to see from LeBron James? Like, is he going to go that route? I know that MJ, people are still mad that he ended up in D.C. At least he played there a couple of years, and that was it, right? I mean, LeBron's already been a vagabond anyway. Do you buy what he's saying, that he's going to remain a Laker for the rest of his career?
No, LeBron's a businessman. I think he's going to do what's best for business. Also, I think the biggest factor going into where LeBron James plays basketball next year is where Bronny is going to go and where he can play with Bronny too. So that's another thing to consider. I don't expect LeBron to end his career as a Laker. I think he'd like to win one more time. If he could do it with Los Angeles and he believes that and he believes in what they're doing there, yes, of course. But I also think he had a part to play in the Warriors trade. I don't think he was like, I believe they tried to ship me off. I think he was actively involved in that. And if the Warriors, if he believed that that was the right move for his career, he probably would have done it. So I'm not sold on LeBron being a Laker the rest of his career. I'm sold on him probably trying to play with Bronny, even though Bronny is definitely not ready to play in the NBA.
No.
That's probably the next move for LeBron. It's a disservice to Bronny to come out, honestly, because he's not ready to do it. But if he can play with his dad, I think that's going to be the move where LeBron goes, whatever team's willing to do that.
Yeah, I agree, Tanner. I think Bronny, just watching enough USC, he's, I think, a 2-year guy. Isaiah Collier, clearly, I think, a 1-year guy. But they've got a lot of guys that are, I think, thinking about the draft and not thinking about winning games out there at USC. And that's why you see him 10-16 plus the injuries. But, yeah, I wonder, where LeBron is coming from saying this, because it's some people believe that he and Rich Paul, his agent, are essentially the general manager of the Lakers. Now, some will say it's Rob Pelinka who actually has the title. And then there's Jeannie Buss's faction with the Rambuses and whatnot. So we don't know who's running this franchise.
Very quickly, the Lakers are 14-1 to win the West this year. And right now, that is, that's the 6th betting favorite in the West alone. So I know that you like the Clippers, and I think we all look at the Nuggets and Clippers. It feels different than the East. Yes, there's a two-headed monster at the East. And I asked you guys if there was a team kind of like Miami as the 8th seed last year. In the West, could it be Golden State? Do they have enough in the second half? I know that's why they were probably even entertaining that LeBron talk. Is there enough there for Golden State and or Dallas Mavericks to make a move in the West? Or do you really think it is just the big two in the Clippers and the Nuggets?
I think it's more the big two in the Clippers and the Nuggets. I think when you look at the Golden State Warriors, yes, they're still fun. They're still entertaining. They still have Steph Curry. And when you have Steph Curry, you're going to be good. But Klay's been very up and down, right? Draymond, since Draymond's been back, they've actually performed very well. But as a whole, I think this franchise is more on the downhill slide. The dynasty's kind of over there. So I wouldn't be touching them in any way whatsoever. The Mavericks, different story there. I think they can be fun and exciting too, but we've seen how the Kyrie and the Luka dynamic works out, and it really hasn't been super dominant over the past couple seasons. So probably staying away from those teams and just looking to the big two in the Clippers and the Nuggets, and also a team like the Thunder, the Timberwolves. Like, you got to respect them too, because they are at the top of the board right now.
Tanner, I got some hockey to talk about. We did have a short slate today, but the headliner, of course, was the Stadium Series that they played in MetLife Stadium, and the Blue Shirts make a comeback. They were down late in the third period, and then takes 10 seconds for the Breadman, Artemi Panarin, to get the game-winning goal. 6-5, Rangers beat the Islanders today in overtime. Full slate tomorrow because, of course, we don't have NBA action until Thursday. Then we have a full board. But full slate tomorrow, President's Day, a lot of day games.
Yes.
Anything standing out to you tomorrow, Tanner?
Yeah, I have a bunch of bets on the board. And first off, it's good that the NHL gets something, right? The football gets Thanksgiving Day. Right now, they're taking over Christmas, too. NBA gets Christmas. So it's good to see that the NHL gets something. My favorite play for tomorrow, though, I do like the Canucks to beat the Wild -120. I hate playing those home dogs, right? I like short away favorites, and that's what we're getting with the Canucks in this spot. The Wild have just not been that good. I can't stand them. They have won 4 of their past 5 games, but overall, the Canucks are one of the most well-rounded teams in the NHL. They're scoring 3.6 goals per game, allowing just 2.57. The Wild don't even score 3 goals per game, and they allow 3.2. So right there, that's a good matchup here for the Canucks to get the job done. Vancouver's also slightly better on the power play and on the penalty kill. Thatcher Demko has been very good this season. He has the best record in the NHL in the net at 30-10-1 and the 7th best save percentage. The Wild have struggled to get going, especially at home, so I think Demko is going to make their life very difficult, and for the short money line price on the Canucks, hard to pass up.
I got to ask you to stay in the West here. I want to look at Edmonton, and they're going to play the Coyotes tomorrow, and I know you like them possibly on the puck line. Short term for tomorrow, but bigger picture. Is this a team that come playoff time, and I know people that might be scarred after watching them play last year and get eliminated right here in the desert, can they play a semblance of defense enough to trust them instead of just the offensive firepower that they bring to the ring every night?
I think they can. I mean, they've been very good this season in all aspects of the game. Obviously, offense is where they get going, right, with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman. But at the same time, too, looking at them, they've been solid on defense at times, right? So for that reason, I think they could make a run. But again, I hate betting the top of the board in the futures market at this point in the season because, especially in the NHL playoffs, anything can happen. We've seen it year after year after year. The top dog gets knocked out because hockey's a sport where a team can dominate shots on goal, and if they don't get one past the goaltender and the other team does, they're going to lose the game. So that's the biggest difference with hockey. I think betting the top of the board, I just can't do it. Where in the NBA, when you're looking at a team like the Celtics or like the Celtics or like the Clippers per se, right? You're getting teams that you know are going to be good and you know can dominate. Hockey doesn't necessarily go that way. But looking at tomorrow, I do like the Oilers on the puck line against the Coyotes. Again, starts with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman. Both have been fantastic this year when it comes to points. And then McDavid's been the assist guy. Hyman's been more of the scoring guy there. The Coyotes starting goalie, Connor Ingram, is out tomorrow. So that's going to hurt them in the sense that they got to put Vijmelka in the goal, 6-13-2 with 3.48 goals allowed per game. Both goaltenders for the Oilers, Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, have been pretty good this season, so I'm comfortable whoever they start in the net. And I do like the Oilers to cover on the puck line for plus 108 against the Coyotes.
And to Tanner's point, Edmonton right now the shortest favorite on the board at plus 750 to hoist that Stanley Cup at the end of the year.
And remember who did actually end their long winning streak were the Vegas Golden Knights, who started out 11-1 this season, but now the Knights find themselves 12 points back in the Pacific. I think they're 5th seed right now in the West. Tanner, for maybe those that kind of dipped out after that winning streak ended for the Golden Knights, was it just natural regression that they came back to earth, or is there something there with this team who's still very good, but obviously not at the top of the West like they were early in the season?
Again, anything can happen in the NHL, so they're a sneaky pick to possibly do something once again. You're going to come back to the earth in sports. I mean, these are long 82-game seasons, right? Anything can happen over that. But don't forget about the Vegas Golden Knights. They have a solid team, and they have a team that can find ways to win games, scoring over 3.1 goals per game. They're giving up less than 2.75. They've been fantastic in that area on the defensive side of the ice, and they got some star players, Jonathan Marchessault, Mark Stone, to be two of those guys. So look for the Golden Knights to step up. My one fear is how they played on the road this season. They haven't necessarily been that consistently dominant team, and that's going to be scary come playoff time because you have to win on the road. But I do like the Golden Knights as an underdog pick out of the West, obviously.
Tanner, you got a couple more tomorrow. This will be in the Eastern Conference. Boston Bruins still near the top, even though the Florida Panthers right now number 1 in the Atlantic Division. Bees 3 points back. Small price that they are laying at home to Dallas tomorrow, and then the Toronto Maple Leafs in St. Louis.
Yeah, so 2 more picks here. The Bruins just don't love what they've done as of late, but I'm still going to take them tomorrow. I think it's a great bounce back spot for them. Actually, last President's Day, I was at TD Garden. They dominated. Hopefully they can do it once again here. Jeremy Swayman, really good goaltender, has not been great this month, only save percentage under 9, but his .946 save percentage in his first game of the season against the Stars. So hopefully he can bounce back and find a way there. And then looking at the Leafs against the Blues, I just think they're going to overpower them offensively in this spot. Maple Leafs scoring nearly 3.6 goals per game. They've also been good on defense, and they're converting on the power play. So look for that to be the difference against the Blues.
Second half's gearing up for both the NBA and the NHL as we get to the second seasons here. Cannot wait for Stanley Cup playoff hockey. Tanner, appreciate the time, man. That was a lot of fun hanging out with us. We do appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
There
Thank
he
you,
is,
Tanner.
everybody. Tanner Kern, give him a follow on X at